Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Jeepers Creepers 3? Stick around and find out. Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those peepers? Jeepers Creepers, where'd you get those eyes? Where'd you get those eyes? All right. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of Jeepers Creepers 3. Let me pull up my notes here. All right, so the synopsis for this one reads, set between the first and second film, Sergeant Davis Tubbs assembles a task force to destroy the Creeper once and for all, while growing closer than ever before to learning the secrets of its dark origins as the monster terrorizes a local farming community. And that synopsis is on imdb.com, and that's really all you need to know. You can skip this one. I don't know. I really like the first two movies, especially the first one, but in rewatching both of them recently, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the second one, more so than I remembered, but I've long had them in my collection. I really enjoy monster movies. I don't mean like monster movies in like the classic B-movie sense, like from the 50s, or like the giant monster stomping on buildings, but like the monster movies that started coming out from the 80s onward. You know, Terminator, the first Terminator movie was a monster movie, and kind of like its structure, and Predator, and John Carpenter's The Thing, and stuff like that. So I really like monster movies, and I really enjoyed the first two movies in this series. I've been wondering for a long time if a third one was ever going to get made. As I understand it, there's some controversy, some legal controversy surrounding the writer and director of these films. I'm not going to get into that. I'm just going to react to these movies, or excuse me, to this movie, just based on what my experience with the movie itself, and not any kind of meta or behind-the-scenes stuff. So let's talk about the story, the script, just the general pacing and tone. I don't understand why this story exists. Why the writer and director, Victor Salva, felt like this story needed to be told. I would love to kind of pick his brain and say, you know, so tell me about like why this story right now. Was this an effort to reintroduce people to the Creeper? If so, I wonder if it really focuses enough to serve in that respect. I don't understand why this story. It starts out, to me, with the potential to end the series well. It's drawing on both the first movie and the lore of the creature's past, which was presented in that first movie, because the idea is this creature appears every 23rd spring for 23 days to feed on people. And then it hibernates for another 23 years, and then the next 23rd spring it shows up and does the same thing again, over and over and over, probably been doing this for quite a long time. The first movie kind of talks about this local legend of 23 years ago, because the first movie was 2001, so I think it was like back in the 70s. This prom couple that never made it to the prom, and they disappeared, and nobody knows what happens, but the rumor is that this weird creature or weird killer or something got them, you know. So there's this local legend, and this movie kind of taps into both that 1970s legend and the events of the first film. And so to me, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. That smells like they're going full circle to wrap this thing up into a nice tight trilogy, but that's really not what my experience was of the rest of the movie after, you know, despite kind of the potential of where they started with it. Ultimately, despite several characters learning a ton more about the creature's nature and origins, the audience is still left in the dark. The audience is never told what these characters learned. They have like these visionary moments, and then they just keep that information all to themselves. They don't open up. They say, oh my gosh, the creature is so much worse and bigger than I imagined, and now I understand its origins, but they don't spill a word of it for the audience to appreciate. And that's a real bummer for me. I felt like Jeepers Creepers 2 revealed far more new info about the creature than this one, simply by showing us in that second movie more about why it eats people, how it makes use of their corpses, the parts that it doesn't eat, and how it heals itself. So there was a lot that was just kind of revealed over the course of the second movie, and there's almost nothing new revealed about the Creeper in this movie. And I think that's, for me, that's an important part of the monster movie experience, is to have the creature cloaked in some degree of mystery, and then have it progressively be revealed revealed over the course of the movie. And if you're going to have a franchise that centers around the same monster, then you've either got to mix up what those movies are in some creative new ways, which I think the Alien movies did pretty well. They used the same creature, and after the second movie, they didn't really reveal a whole lot more. You could argue that the creature changed a little bit, as those movies went on, but mostly it was just about, with the third movie and the fourth movie, these directors kind of telling stories about different characters and worlds and situations and stuff, and that was kind of what made them each distinct from each other, more so than the creature being all new and stuff like that. And in the second movie, in Jeepers Creepers, even though you didn't have as much revelation over the course of the movie about the creature as in the first movie, where he starts out in just kind of like this, as just kind of like a potentially, a psycho in a truck. We don't know what's going on or who this mysterious person is. And then we realize, oh my gosh, this is more of a creature than it is a person. Holy crap, and so anyway, but there was really not that kind of progression for the creeper, I felt, in this movie. There was far less creature body horror, whereas in the second movie he's getting wounded and then you see him kind of ripping off parts of his body and growing new parts and stuff. So there's far less, creature body horror going on in this movie, and there are a lot more characters that are just being juggled, and that made the experience very unfocused for me. You had this bus of school kids in the second movie, and a few of them that stood out and were kind of focused on, in addition to one other pair of characters arguably. And in the first movie it was largely about just this brother and sister, and it was so spread out, it spread so thin that I didn't really care about anyone, because there wasn't enough time given to any one set of characters or any single character to really help me care about them. The teenage characters in particular I felt like weren't as defined or interesting as they were in Jeepers Creepers 2, and certainly not as interesting to me as the great sibling relationship that the first movie centered on. The sheriff in this movie, who is a major character, almost struck me as comedically ignorant and comedically angry in the last third of the film. I was just like, this guy, it reminded me of almost like a classic bumbling sheriff, but yet he was a lot more angry, But I just felt like this guy is inept. This guy is inept, and to the point where I totally have no patience for this guy. And he sticks around for so much of the movie. Sorry, spoilers, Anyway, monster movies work best for me, as I said before, when the monster is revealed progressively, and I care about at least kind of the main protagonists. Monster movies that do this well for me, if you want to kind of get a sense of where I'm setting the bar and my personal tastes, would be Jeepers Creepers 1, Aliens to a lesser degree, John Carpenter's The Thing, Prometheus, and The Terminator. And this one just failed big time for me in both of those areas of caring about at least a few of the main protagonists and having the monster revealed progressively over the course of the movie. One of the main characters from the first movie returns at the very end of this one, promising revenge in a follow-up story. So they're banking on, I guess, giving us at least one more Jeepers Creepers movie that will properly go full circle to the main surviving character of the first movie, But I wish they'd gone straight to that story and capped off the trilogy. Maybe just add a little bit of age makeup, because we haven't reached 23 years since that first movie came out, and the actor that's coming back maybe doesn't look quite yet 23 years older, so maybe they're going to wait until they'll look a little bit more appropriate to that age. But I would say, man, better to just tell that story now, give them a little bit of age makeup, and let's get on to, let's cap this off as a nice solid trilogy. Instead, we're going this 4-movie route with a third movie that, to my mind, doesn't serve any purpose. And now I'm not sure that a fourth movie will be made if other fans react to this one the way that I am. It's really, really puzzling. Okay, so let me just say briefly regarding the cast. I didn't feel like this was a cast made up of quote-unquote bad actors, but the performances felt either more flat or more phony to me somehow when compared to the first two movies. The script definitely wasn't helping them, I don't think, but I wish some of the actors would have brought something to elevate the material more, some kind of X factor. So moving on to just kind of the stunts and the visual look of this movie. The previous Jeepers Creepers films used a combination of CG and practical effects, largely staying practical to, I thought, great effect. I'm cursed with eyes that pick out CG really easily, so, and it's it's sometimes very distracting to me because I just feels like I'm watching a high-tech cartoon. So I really appreciate good practical effects. This one leans way too much on CG for me, and the CG is pretty rough. I don't know. I'm guessing this movie had a much smaller budget relatively, maybe when you factor in inflation, to the first two movies. It just looked cheaper, and maybe there was just some practical things they would have loved to do that they just decided we can do this more cheaply with CG. Well, you can if you use cheap CG, and that's kind of what this movie felt like. The Creeper's wings looked little or no better than they did in Jeepers Creepers 2, and that movie was released way back in 2003. And there's some car stunts and explosions that go full CG late in the movie, and they just had me shaking my head at their quality. Not to mention a bunch more little CG things that looked like just TV quality CG peppered throughout this whole movie. Thankfully, although the trailer, which I really did not find the trailer for this movie encouraging or impressive at all. The trailer had me wondering if the shooting style would lack all artistry, but Victor Salva brings back his signature kind of visual style and vibe from the first two movies to this one. Kinda. There are still there are still like some quiet slow-mo sequences that bring out the drama of a scene. The Creeper is still quite often backlit or placed in the unfocused background. I think that's where the Creeper works best. But these techniques are used inconsistently. I wish they would have been used much more consistently. Hide that monster, especially if when you shine light on him, he's going to look less convincing, which I think happened a number of times for me in this movie. Another thing that was kind of inconsistent, there's a woman in this movie who converses with her dead son, which is somewhat like the girl on the bus in Jeepers Creepers 2 who saw these visions of a dead boy. But they showed those visions that she had with this boy in kind of like, they gave him like this dreamlike quality, and the dead son in this movie is filmed and treated as though he is just as alive and present as anyone else. There's nothing stylistic, no sound effects, no kind of weird things with focus or with lighting or anything like that to alert me that this is a supernatural or a mental event taking place, that this mother is conversing with her dead son. If they wouldn't have mentioned it in the script, that like, you were killed, years ago or whatever she says to him in the first scene, then I might have wondered, is he dead? And I think that's, I don't know, it just felt kind of cheap and flat somehow to not put any kind of extra artistry to signify that there's a supernatural or a mental event happening here. Additionally, the Creeper, I think, is shown in way too much detail for me in this movie. I like practical monsters and makeup effects, but it's still important for the weaknesses of those techniques to be hidden from me by lighting, quick edits, or a lack of focus when appropriate. At times, the Creeper just looked to me like a guy in a rubber mask when standing in broad daylight, so that was kind of a bummer. All right, so is there anything that I think might stimulate worthwhile thought or conversation on moral, philosophical, or spiritual topics in this movie? Well, although the Creeper is again implied to be a supernatural and maybe even demonic creature, despite the fact that he drives around in a truck and even uses a police scanner and some other bits of little like technological type things, there are new characters who show up and experience visions of him, as happened in previous films. But even with all that, the lore, the supernatural lore about this character and surrounding him wasn't focused on enough to bring anything interesting to my mind. If I had to find something, I did find it a little bit interesting that the dead boy featured in this movie that the surviving mother is interacting with said that he was part of the creature now, which brought to mind kind of the mistaken idea that some have that those in hell will in some way be victimized or ruled by demons, that there are these evil spiritual creatures. Oh, that's my phone. I think I'm supposed to do some laundry. Crap. I gotta get to that in a second. That there's potential for like evil supernatural creatures to have dominance over people in the spiritual world or in the afterlife, but the ghost stories like that that imply this kind of state, they really are neglecting or ruling out the place that God has as ultimate ruler and authority overall. So again, that's just something that briefly came to mind. It's not much, I know, but that's the best I can do in a movie that I felt so disconnected from. Anyway, I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, skip this one. Maybe, if another one gets made and the series wraps up well, you can go back and add this one if you find it really cheap to complete your collection, if it retrospectively gains some worth and adds something to the series. As it stands, it doesn't seem to add anything, and if a fourth movie is made, it doesn't seem like it will be necessary at all to have seen this movie, and in fact, if anything, it confused me in the way it fit into the lore, because in the final scene, there's a character that gets on the school bus that's featured in the second movie. But to my mind, that character, which was heavily featured in this movie, is not in that second movie at all. Certainly not the actor playing him, but I looked on IMDb, checked the name of this character in this movie that gets on the bus, and then went back to the Jeepers Creepers 2 entry on IMDb, looked for any reference to a character by that name. I don't know, maybe he got off the bus, got dropped off or something. It doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, so Peter, skip, and hope that the last story still gets told, as this is a series that you'd love to see finish well. It's not rated, but would likely be rated R for violence, gore, and language. All right, those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please consider supporting this channel by becoming a Spirit Blade Insider, which grants you exclusive monthly behind-the-scenes content. For more info, you can visit our About page over at spiritblade.com, where you'll also find our audio dramas and our weekly podcast. If you want to like, share, and subscribe, that's a nice way to support this channel as well. And finally, there's a ton more content and community over at christiangeekcentral.com. I hope you'll join us there soon as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.